This happened back in October 2022, close to Halloween. My GF, along with her friend, own a hair salon since the end of 2020. They usually do Instagram posts, appointments, and everything related with social media with an iPhone that they only and exclusively use for the business. Since they were too close to Halloween, they decided to make an altar inspired in the Day of the Dead on the salon. Context: the Day of the Dead, or Dia de Muertos, is a celebration in Mexico in where you put a stand with pictures of your relatives that passed away along with food offerings and things like that, because it is believed that your dead relatives come in spirit to taste the things they used to like while they were alive. If you have seen the movie Coco, you might know what I'm talking about. The day they put the altar at the salon, everyone went home like usual. She came home and we did our normal routine. I went to sleep, and since she always had trouble to fall asleep, she continued watching some series in Netflix. Somewhere around 2-3 in the morning, she wakes me up frantically. My first thought was that she watched some horror movie or something, but she couldn't even talk a whole sentence, and she was pointing at her phone. I hug her until she calmed down for around 10 minutes, and then she started to say that she received a FaceTime from the phone at the salon. She said that she was watching the TV when she started to receive a FaceTime request. Since it was 3 in the morning, she thought it was very unlikely it was her friend, the salon co-owner. But since there were times in where they stayed late to do the material restocking, she probably thought she was there doing that and probably had an emergency. When she accepted the FaceTime, she only saw the ceiling. She started to say her friend's name, thinking she made the FaceTime, but nothing came on screen. It was only the ceiling and the red light they leave on during the night. She started to have an eerie feeling and ended the FaceTime. Since they have security cameras on the business, she opened the app on her phone to see what was going on. At this point, she thinks that probably a thief has broken in. As soon as she sees the cameras, there's no one there. She puts the camera on reverse to see the exact moment at when she was called, and you can only see the phone turn on by itself and make the FaceTime to her. That's when she lost it and woke me up. She said that she can't explain the fact that the phone had a security lock, that only her and her friend knew the password to it, and also the fact that whoever or whatever was manipulating the phone picked her contact and made a FaceTime. There's no logic in that whole process. A day after, she showed everyone at the salon what happened, and everyone were in shock, because there was no way the phone did all that by itself at 3 a.m. Never heard of someone else receive a call from no one. That was the first and the last year they made a Day of the Dead thematic for the salon, since they got goosebumps every time they remember what happened. Someone attributed it to the altar they made because supposedly you're inviting the dead to wander your place. 3 years gone by, but we still remember that night. Did someone else had a similar situation like ours? This story happened in the year 2016, when I worked in a call center company. I worked as a call center agent, and I handled Sprint account. This is about how I encountered ghost 3 times in that place. First encounter, the training room. One night when we're in training, there's no employee that time. They're all in day off. So the only people in the company is the security, our trainer, and 20 newly hired agents, including me. We started the training 10 p.m. and around 3 a.m., while our trainer is standing in front of us explaining how to manage calls, we heard someone crying in the next room. Then we looked at the trainer, and the trainer stopped talking. Then he asked, "Can you all hear that?" And we replied, "Yes, someone is crying in the other room." Then our trainer looked scared, but he gets out of our room and checked the other room, and when he came back, he told us that there is a resident ghost in that building that always doing that. But he told us that we don't have to be scared. Second encounter, the elevator. This time, I'm not in training anymore, and I'm answering calls. I start my work at 12 a.m. I answered for 2 hours, and I took my first break. After I eat in our pantry, I decided to smoke. Our office is at the 18th floor, and the smoking area is at the 3rd floor of the building. So I get out of the office and went to the elevator. But as I'm approaching the elevator, I saw someone standing in front of the elevator. Then the elevator opens, and I saw this person enter the elevator, so I ran to catch the elevator. But when I entered, there's no one inside, that just me. I remembered as the elevator is going down, I'm chilling, because it's so cold, even I'm wearing my jacket. Third encounter. The restroom. This time, it happened around 3 a.m. I took my break and went straight to the restroom because I need to pee. At that time, we were receiving a high volume of calls, so most of the agents are busy. There's no one outside. When I entered the restroom, there's no one there. I started to pee when suddenly the automatic faucet just few feet away from me start to open, and I can see the water coming out of it. At that time, I thought that maybe it's just malfunctioning, so I ignored it. After I'm done peeing, I went to the faucet to wash my hands. We have 4 faucets in that restroom. I used the faucet beside the faucet that turned on by itself. While I'm washing my hands, I'm thinking, what happened to this faucet beside me? I thought maybe it's because it's wet. So I poured water into that faucet, and it's still not doing what it did earlier. So I thought maybe it's the wind. So I get some paper towels and starts using it to fan that faucet, but it's still not doing anything. Then I put my hands in front of it, and it's working perfectly. I started doubting that this faucet is broken, when suddenly I heard the toilet cubicle door open slowly, so I looked at it while it's opening. When suddenly it slammed shut and opened and closed rapidly. I almost slip on my way out because I'm so scared and my body is trembling while I'm running. Then I went back inside the production area, and I never went to that restroom alone, ever.
I got hired at a call center that ran on a strict 3 strikes and you're fired system. On paper, it didn't sound too bad. Mess up 3 times, you're out. Simple. But on my very first day, I learned just how fast those strikes could pile up. When I arrived, I tried swiping my new key card. It didn't work. I tried again. Still nothing. The lobby was empty. No receptionist, no help. I stood outside, knocking on the glass, watching employees walk past me without even glancing in my direction. Some of them had to hear me, but their eyes never shifted. After nearly 5 minutes, a security guard finally opened the door. He didn't say a word, just walked away. When I reached the training room, the instructor didn't ask what happened. She just glared at me, wrote something down on her clipboard, and said, "Strike 1." Training itself felt suffocating. No phones, no questions without raising your hand. Every second felt monitored. When break time finally came, I was relieved to step away. I sat in the break room under the ticking of the wall clock. Nobody talked. Nobody even moved much. When I walked back into the training room, the trainer stopped me at the door and announced I was late. The clock on the training computer said I was 1 minute past, but the break room clock had been right on time. The clocks weren't synced, and with phones banned, I had no way to prove it. She scribbled on her clipboard again, "Strike 2." By then, I noticed something strange about the other trainees. They sat slouched, lifeless, no smiles, no eye contact, just blank expressions, like they had already been broken down. That afternoon, we started practice calls. I put on the headset, script glowing on the monitor in front of me, and followed it word for word. The line clicked, and suddenly someone screamed into my ear. Not just an annoyed customer, this was primal, violent rage. Then, in the middle of the shouting, the voice said my full name. I froze. I hadn't told him who I was, and the voice didn't sound like it was coming through a phone line. It sounded like it came from right behind me. Instinctively, I broke script, tried to calm him down, but before I could finish, the call cut off with a burst of static. Almost immediately, 2 men in suits appeared behind me. "Come with us," one of them said. They marched me across the floor. Hundreds of employees sat at cubicles with their headsets on. Not one looked up, not one blinked. The suits led me into the supervisor's office and shut the door. Without a word, the supervisor pressed a button on a recorder. The call I had just taken played back, but it wasn't the customer's voice anymore. It was mine, flat, robotic, repeating the script over and over. Then came static, long and heavy, and in that static, I heard a whisper. "You don't take work seriously, do you?" When the recording ended, the supervisor leaned forward. For the first time all day, he smiled. "You've already had your 3rd strike." The lights flickered, the suits stepped closer, and then the headset around my neck came alive with static, followed by voices, hundreds of them. Every employee on the floor, all chanting my name, over and over, louder and louder. The last thing I remember before blacking out was that sound drilling into my head as the room plunged into darkness. When I woke up, I was back at a desk, headset on, script glowing on the monitor. The trainer stood across the room, pen in hand, watching me closely. She smiled. "Let's try again. Don't mess this one up." That's when I noticed the new hires sitting beside me weren't new at all. They were the same employees I had seen in the cubicles, and their eyes, they were empty. I don't think anyone ever leaves this call center.
I want to start with a little background before I get to the part that still keeps me awake at night. Last summer, I stumbled across Sam and Colby's channel, and that was kind of my gateway into everything paranormal, outside of the Christian theology and stories I'd grown up with. When school started, I showed the channel to my close friends, and it became something of a joke and a dare. I remember one night my best friend and I got high, sat on the edge of this old wooden deck, and watched Sam and Colby's Conjuring House series on my phone until it felt like the dark outside was watching us back. We even messed around with an Ouija board once. Don't worry, we tried to be careful and set precautions, said the prayers we knew, and tried to treat it like a weird game more than anything else. Still, those evenings peeled back something in me. They tuned my brain to look for patterns and shadows, where before I might have shrugged and walked on. So by the time the thing I'm about to tell you happened, it took a lot to actually spook me. One small detail I'll be honest about up front. I'd taken one shot right before this. Not a whole night of drinking, not blackout territory, just one shot, and then I was out of chaser and needed water. It was at least midnight. In my parents' house, there's an unwritten rule. Everyone stays in their rooms after lights out at 10. My room opens onto the living room, which connects to the kitchen, and right in front of my door is a stairway that leads down to the basement. That layout matters. Because I didn't want to wake anyone, I turned my room light on, but left the door wide, the light spilling into the dark hallway so I could see into the kitchen without flipping the overheads. I padded down the short hall and stood at the sink filling a glass. There's a window above the sink that looks out into the black of our street. No street lights, nothing but the breath of the night. The only illumination was the small rectangle of my room light behind me. As the faucet ran, I glanced up at the window and froze. At first, I thought it was a trick of my eyes, a smear on the glass, but then the reflection resolved into a shape, a black figure, tall and human-shaped, stepping out of the living room doorway and turning toward the stairs. It was thinner than a man should be, like a silhouette someone had cut out and stuffed with darkness. No features, no face, just the impression of a head, shoulders, and a long, slow motion down toward the basement. The reflection caught it perfectly, as if someone had pressed a shadow up against the other side of the glass. My stomach dropped. My first irrational thought was, get out of here, but it moved with the same slow, deliberate motion you'd expect from a person who knows they're unseen. It didn't look at me, it didn't react. It just walked, then turned, then descended. In the reflection, it disappeared into blackness. Then the reflection only reflected me, wide-eyed and clutching a glass of water like a lifeline. I remember standing there, heart hammering, and deciding, stupidly, that if it wasn't bothering me, maybe I shouldn't bother it. I told myself other things to stay sane, that my brain was playing with me because of the video and the shot, that shadows stretch weird against glass, that a trick of the light made the hallway look like a person. I took a breath, kept my head down, finished filling the glass, and walked back to my room. The whole time I made sure not to glance down the stairs. I told myself that looked less like fear and more like respect, some lines you don't cross. After that night, my eyes never trusted the house the same way. I started seeing movement out of the corner of my eye. Small things at first, a wick of something darker than the dark by the stairwell, a flicker at the edge of the living room where no shadow should be. Once I swore I heard a soft footstep that wasn't quite a footstep, more like a scrape on carpet that started at the top of the stairs and ended at the basement door. The Ouija game and Sam and Colby's videos felt like a map I'd followed straight to a place I was never meant to tread. Sleep became a negotiation. I couldn't sleep in a dark room anymore unless someone else was in it. If I was alone, the air would tighten around my ears, and the house would breathe with new, deliberate timing. Lights had to be left on, bedside lamps, hallway night lights, anything to keep reflections honest. When I closed my eyes in the pitch of that first night, I kept seeing the window again. The black man stepping into the staircase, the way he didn't hurry. It wasn't violent right away. It didn't slam doors or shout. It slid, patient and patient, like a thing that expected me to forget it, and then one day find myself staring at the bottom of the stairs with no idea why I'd get chills. A week later, I tried to play it down. I told my friend about it, and he laughed, said I was tripping from the booze in the videos. But when he stayed the night and fell asleep on my bed, I woke before dawn to him breathing shallow and a shadow crouched at the doorway to his side of the room. No face, no features, just watching him sleep. I nudged my friend and he muttered in his sleep without opening his eyes. The shadow didn't move. When morning came and the sun cut through the blinds, the outline was gone, like someone had taken an eraser to the air. I didn't tell my parents. What do you even say? Hey, there's a shadow man on the stairs. I could hear their practical voices countering me. Draft, stress, lack of sleep. And part of me wanted an explanation that made sense. But the feeling followed me. The hair on my arms would stand up in the middle of a quiet evening. My peripheral vision would pick up the suggestion of a shape, and when I turned, it would be nothing. It's small things. Objects slightly out of place in the kitchen in the morning, the faint smell of tobacco in a room where nobody smokes, the subtle sense that an extra presence matches your pace when you walk through the living room. The longer it went on, the more I realized the scariest part wasn't the figure itself, but how normal it seemed to be with it around. It didn't rattle the house, it didn't knock things over. It simply existed in the negative space of life, like static on a channel you can't quite tune out. If the Ouija and those videos taught me anything, it was that once you name a thing, it becomes easier to find. And somehow, by peeking in, by showing the videos to friends, by messing with a planchette on a bored night, I had given whatever it was a door. Now, months later, I still can't sleep alone in a dark room. If I do, I wake halfway through the night certain something is perched on the landing outside my door, a black silhouette against the thin strip of hallway light. Sometimes I force myself to look and find nothing but the normal slant of a coat on a peg or the way moonlight pools on the floor. Other times I swear I see the impression of a hand on the banister, like a proof someone left behind. I don't know what it wanted. I don't know if it still watches. The only thing that's certain is this: the house is not empty when I'm not looking, and the black figure never seems startled by my presence. It only ever moves when I do, and always, eventually, it takes the stairs down.